The clay never lies. It holds every trace, the hesitation in a thumb press, the impatience in a wall pushed too thin, the confidence in a smooth, perfect curve. My grandmother taught me that, her hands, wrinkled and stained with the red earth of the desert, guiding mine on the potter's wheel. The clay knows your spirit, Kaelen, she would whisper in the language of our people, a tongue that sounded like water over stones. It feels your story before you even tell it. She was a potter, her vessels history books that held the stories of our Paiute people, but I chose oil and canvas. I wanted those stories to explode with color, to shout from walls in a world that seemed to have forgotten how to listen. My paintings were prayers in pigment, the turquoise of a winter sky over the Sierra Nevadas, the burnt sienna of a canyon at dusk, the intricate spirals that spoke of star ancestors and trickster coyotes. They were my grandmother's legacy, reborn in the fire of contemporary art. I'm Kaelen Grey, a woman of mixed blood with skin that holds the warmth of the desert and eyes from an Irish father I never knew. And I am an artist. At least, I was trying to be. The reality of being an artist is a series of closed doors. For a mixed-blood indigenous woman, it is a labyrinth of distorted mirrors, each one reflecting a warped version of you the world wants to see. My journey began with naive hope, a carefully curated portfolio and a list of galleries in Santa Fe, Los Angeles, and New York. The first rejection, a curt, cold email from a gallery in Santa Fe, stung. "Thank you for your interest. Your work is not a fit for our current program." Polite, but empty. The 10th rejection, a returned package with a tear in the corner, felt like a scar. By the 50th, I was numb. The numbness was a thin armor over a festering wound. The worst rejections weren't the silences, but the explanations. They were the neatly packaged critiques, the razor-sharp words that carved me into a smaller, more marketable box. I will never forget Eleonora Vance, a Soho gallerist with a severe platinum bob and eyes that calculated everything in monetary value. She swiped through my digital slides on a large tablet, her perfectly manicured red nail flicking past canvases I had poured my soul into. "There's a certain raw energy," she'd commented, her tone that of an entomologist examining a strange bug. "But it's too ethnographically specific. These symbols," she gestured vaguely at my painting, Mother Owl's breath, "they're powerful, but they limit your audience. Our collectors are looking for global voices, something with a more universal appeal, more contemporary." More contemporary. That phrase became my ghost. If I painted with obvious symbols of my heritage, the stylized figures, the patterns from my grandmother's basketry, my work was labeled folk art, craft, or a charming southwestern decorative piece. It was treated as an artifact from a dead culture, not a voice from a living, evolving one. But when I tried to abstract those influences, to distill their spirit into pure form and color, I was accused of being inauthentic. A Scottsdale gallery owner, a sun-weathered man whose oversized turquoise bolo tie seemed like an act of mockery, told me, "Collectors come to us for authentic native art. It could have been painted by anyone. It has lost its soul." It was a maddening, cruel catch-22. The art world wanted my heritage, but only a sanitized, pre-packaged version they could understand and sell. They wanted my otherness as a hook, but not its complexity, not its truth. The nauseating irony was that I would regularly see white male artists celebrated for their bold fusion when they shallowly appropriated tribal motifs or primitivism. They were called visionaries, while my authentic, deeply rooted expression was deemed too niche. That injustice wasn't just about art. It was about erasure. It was a system that had built its wealth plundering the aesthetics of our ancestors while denying their descendants a seat at the table. My best friend, Jenna, was my fortress through these storm-filled years. Jenna was a hurricane of Chicago energy, with hair as fiery as her sense of justice. We'd met in a community ceramics class, She was trying futilely to make a mug that didn't collapse, and I was trying to find the feeling of clay under my hands again. She was the first person to look at my canvases and see not a Native American artist, but an artist, period. "It's not your art, Kaelen," she would rage after another rejection letter arrived. "It's them. They're blind. They have this tiny Eurocentric keyhole they look through, and if your art doesn't fit that narrow view, they can't see its value. They want your ethnicity as a spice, but they don't want to taste the main course." My breaking point came on a damp October evening. I had just come from the opening of an artist named Marcus Thorne. His works were massive, minimalist canvases of severe geometric lines and swaths of earthy color, a blatant, soulless pastiche of artists like Mark Rothko, but marketed with a nonsensical story about reconnecting with primordial archetypes. The gallery was packed with chic, wealthy patrons, sipping champagne and nodding sagely at his depth. I stood at the back, feeling invisible, and a cold, quiet rage began to build in my gut. These primordial archetypes, he had stolen them. He had taken the sacred shapes of cultures like mine, stripped them of their meaning. That night, Jenna came to my studio with a 6-pack of beer and a look of determination in her eyes. My studio, normally my sanctuary, felt like a tomb that night. Canvases were stacked against every wall, their vibrant colors muted by the shadows of my self-doubt. I told her about Marcus Thorne's show, and my rage spilled out in frustrated tears.
"That's it," Jenna said, slamming her beer down with a thud. "We're done. We're not playing their game anymore." She looked around the studio, her eyes scanning my paintings, one of a vast desert under a river of stars, another an abstraction of a rain god's dance.
"Kaelen,"
she said, her voice soft now.
"your art is powerful. It deserves to be seen. If they can't see you, then we'll make them see only the art." "What do you mean?" I asked, wiping my eyes. "I have an idea," she said, and the sly grin began to form on her lips. "It's a little crazy, possibly unethical, but I think it might just work. There's this big, prestigious online art prize, the Aperture Prize for Contemporary Art. The jury is a who's who, critics from London, curators from Berlin, artists from Tokyo. And the most important part? The judging process is completely blind. They only get a digital image and a reference number. No name, no bio, nothing, until they've chosen the shortlist." I felt a flicker of something. So, she said, leaning forward, her eyes bright, "we submit your work, but not as Kaelen Grey. We invent someone they would never question, someone they expect to make important, contemporary art." She paused for effect. "We submit it as a white man." I stared at her, horrified. "Jenna, no! That's fraud. It's a lie." "Is it more of a lie than a system that has been lying to you from the start?" she countered, her voice full of passion. "A system that hails a plagiarist like Marcus Thorne as a genius while dismissing you as craft? Think of it as an experiment, Kaelen, a scientific study. Our hypothesis? The art world is racially and sexually biased. Our experiment? Submit the same work under 2 different identities. We already have the results for Kaelen Grey. Now let's see what happens to, oh, I don't know." She squinted in thought. "Julian Croft. Sounds like someone who owns a sailboat and is gluten intolerant." Despite the gravity, I couldn't help but let out a short, watery laugh. Her logic was brutal and irrefutable, but it settled in my stomach like a stone. My art was me. A Paiute woman, a mixed blood, a carrier of my grandmother's stories. To separate it from my identity felt like a profound... And so, Julian Croft was born. Jenna, with her flair for writing, crafted a perfectly, laughably pretentious artist bio. Julian was a recluse in rural New England who had traveled extensively and was influenced by existential philosophy and the dichotomy of man-made structure versus natural chaos. It was a masterpiece of art world nonsense, and we laughed until we cried while writing it. We chose 3 of my strongest paintings. One was Coyote's star map, a vast, nearly black canvas with swirling rivers of silver and blue that evoked both the Milky Way and ancient trails. The other 2 were more abstract, Song of the Clay and Rain Shadow, both deeply infused with the spirit of the desert without using any overt symbols. Jenna photographed them expertly, uploaded them to the competition site, paid the entry fee with her credit card, and then we waited. The waiting was a new kind of purgatory. I tried to live my life, working shifts at a local coffee shop, the smell of burnt espresso masking the scent of turpentine on my hands. I tried not to think about it, but Julian Croft was a ghost in the back of my mind. The long list was announced via email. Jenna forwarded it to me without comment. I opened it with a hammering heart, and I saw it. There, among hundreds of names from all over the world, was Julian Croft. A strange, dizzying feeling washed over me. It was exhilaration tainted with guilt. A few weeks later, the shortlist was announced. 20 artists. Jenna called me this time, her voice a tense whisper. "Check your email, now." I did, and there he was again, Julian Croft, sandwiched between a German installation artist and a Japanese sculptor. I felt sick. Jenna was ecstatic. "I told you," she shrieked over the phone. "They can't deny the talent, Kaelen. When they don't know who to look at, they have to actually look." The winners were to be announced during a live-streamed ceremony. I couldn't bring myself to watch. The anxiety was too much. Instead, I sat in my studio, surrounded by the silent proof of my failed career, and tried to breathe. Jenna watched, providing a running commentary via text message. "It's starting. The host is so smarmy." They're announcing the honorable mentions, not Julian. Third prize, a photographer from Brazil. Good for her. OMG, my heart is going to explode. Second prize, not Julian. My phone was silent for a minute that stretched into an eternity. I stared at it, my palms sweating, and then it rang. It was Jenna. I answered and was met with a raw, wordless shriek. "Jenna, what is it?" "You won!" she finally managed. I dropped the phone. The room started to spin. My art. The art that was too ethnic, not contemporary enough. The art that nobody wanted had just won one of the most prestigious contemporary art prizes in the world. Because it was signed by a non-existent white man. The validation roared through me, hot and fierce, but it was followed immediately by an ice-cold wave of anger. They didn't love my art. They loved my lie. The grand prize came with a significant cash award, a solo exhibition at a partner gallery in London, and an invitation for the artist to give an acceptance speech at the virtual gala. Now came the hard part. Julian Croft couldn't exactly make an appearance, but Jenna, my brave, audacious friend, already had a plan. "I'll accept on his behalf," she declared as we sat in my studio days later, plotting our next move. "I'll be his studio representative, and I'm going to give a speech." Her eyes met mine. A speech that we are going to write together. The days leading up to the gala were a whirlwind of clandestine preparation. We wrote and rewrote the speech. We gathered digital copies of the most damning rejection letters. Jenna practiced, her voice, at first trembling, growing stronger and steadier with conviction. This wasn't a prank anymore. This was a reckoning. On the night of the gala, I sat alone in the darkness of my studio, the only light coming from my laptop screen. My heart pounded against my ribs. When the host, a famous art critic, began to gush about Julian Croft's singular vision and refreshing originality, a bitter taste filled my mouth. Then he introduced, "And now, to accept the award on Mr. Croft's behalf is his representative, Ms. Jenna Clark." Jenna appeared on screen, looking elegant and composed. She smiled, thanked the jury and the organizers. Then, her smile faded. Her expression turned serious. "Mr. Julian Croft is deeply honored by this recognition," she began, her voice clear and steady. "He has asked me to convey his profound gratitude. However, he also believes that this moment, this prestigious platform, calls for a truth that extends beyond his own work. You see, Julian Croft, the artist whose work you have so lavishly praised tonight, is, in fact, a fabrication." A stunned silence fell over the virtual audience. The live chat, which had been scrolling with congratulations, froze. The host's smile faltered. Jenna continued, her voice gaining strength. "The true artist behind these paintings is a woman, a mixed-blood Native American woman. Her name is Kaelen Grey." "For years," Jenna's voice cut through the stunned silence, "Kaelen has poured her heart, her heritage, and her immense talent into her work, and for years, she has been met with rejection from the very kind of institutions and individuals present here tonight. Her art, when presented under her own name, was deemed too ethnic, not contemporary enough, or worse, craft." Then, Jenna did something even more audacious. She began displaying excerpts from the actual rejection letters on the screen, the names of the galleries subtly blurred. While technically proficient, Miss Gray's work with its overt cultural references may not resonate with our broader collector base. We find the narrative too specific, less aligned with current global contemporary art trends. Perhaps if the artist explored themes with less tribal emphasis. The hypocrisy was stark, undeniable. The live chat exploded with a mixture of outrage, disbelief, and support. "The judges of the Aperture Prize," Jenna concluded, her gaze direct and unwavering, "selected these paintings based on their artistic merit alone, blind to the artist's name, gender, or ethnicity. Their judgment validates what Kaelen has always known, that her art has power and it speaks a universal language. The question we must ask ourselves tonight is, why did it take a pseudonym, a deception, for that truth to be acknowledged? How many other Kaelens are out there, their voices silenced, their art unseen, because of ingrained biases and gatekeepers who refuse to look beyond their own narrow definitions? Kaelen wins this prize, not just for herself, but for all unseen artists. It is time for the art world to truly open its eyes. Thank you." The live stream ended abruptly. My studio was silent, but only for a moment. Then my phone began to ring. My email began to flood. The story had gone viral. Julian Croft and Kaelen Grey became a sensation. It wasn't just an art story. It was a story about identity, injustice, and an act of rebellion that had exposed the face of a system. The retribution, if you could call it that, was not what I expected. It wasn't a simple, sweet victory. It was complex and messy. The galleries that had rejected me were either shamefully silent or issued vague, defensive statements about curatorial vision. A few reached out with offers I now had the power to coldly decline. The prize organizers, to their credit, publicly stood by their decision and lauded me for starting a necessary conversation. But the real victory wasn't in the sudden fame or the incoming exhibition offers. It was in what came next. I accepted the solo show in London, but I did so with one condition. The exhibition would not be called Kaelen Grey Prize-Winning Works. I spent the next weeks using my newfound platform and a portion of the prize money to find the others. The artists I found on obscure online forums, the ones recommended by friends of friends. A young Navajo weaver whose tapestries told contemporary stories of pipeline politics. A two-spirit Anishinaabe painter whose haunting portraits had been dismissed by galleries as too confrontational. An Aleut sculptor whose work had been rejected for not looking Aleut enough. The end of this story isn't me standing in a London gallery, basking in the spotlight. It ends here, in my studio, months later. It's late. The scent of oil paint and sage hangs in the air. Outside, the desert is quiet under a blanket of stars. On my laptop screen is the face of a young woman. She is on a reservation in Montana, and she makes stunning digital art that fuses crow floral designs with the glitch aesthetics of the digital age. She is telling me, her voice full of disbelief, how she has been rejected over and over again. I listen, and then I say, I have an empty space on a wall in London. I think your work would look perfect there. Her stunned silence, followed by a quiet, choked sob, that is my real prize. It is the transformation from being the one at the gate to the one holding it open. The fame is fleeting. The invitations will fade. But the power to pass the key on, to say to another unseen artist, I see you. That is the legacy. My grandmother taught me that the clay knows a person's spirit. Perhaps a system does too. And sometimes you have to break it to remake it into something new, something more honest, something that can hold all of our stories. The work is not done. The work is just beginning.